For our final speaker this morning, we return to our basics, and Madame Rozokoki will talk about Hercules' 10th labor in relation to Stesichorus.
I would like to dedicate my lecture, of course, to the 25 years of Euroclassica and to the 150 years of the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. Then it was Monday, 3rd October 1866. This year is again Monday, 3 October 2016. Stesichorus, a Sicilian Greek lyric poet, lived from the late 7th century until the mid-6th century BC. His name indicates that he was the first to establish a chorus of singers for the kithara. Stesichorus recounted epic themes with a lyric meter and is considered to be the link between epic and lyric poetry. His poems were collected together in 26 books and were written in a literary dialect with a mixture of Doric and Ionic elements and with a primarily mythical content. He has been characterized as the most Homeric and a follower of Homer. His work was greatly praised in antiquity. Horace describes the Stesichorian poetry as grave, and Dionysius of Halicarnassus speaks of the magnificence of Stesichorus' themes. Quintilian places him second after Pintar for the strength of his talent. On the other hand, however, Quintilian accuses Stesichorus of redundancy and lack of restraint. The Geryoneise described the 10th labor of Hercules, that is, the capture of the cattle of Geryon. The king of Argos, Eurystheus, whom Hercules served, ordered the hero to bring him the famous cattle. Geryon lived in the far west, beyond the ocean, on an island called Erythea, which means red earth. Erythea is located opposite the city of Gadira, from which it is separated by a channel. Gadira was located near the mouth of the river Guadalquivir and is identified with today's coastal city of Cádiz. To the northwest, here you can see Cádiz, and Cádiz is to the northwest of Gibraltar. According to Pliny, the name Gadira is derived from the Punic word gadir, meaning fence. We should recall that the city had been founded by Phoenicians at the end of the second millennium BC. The herdsman of Geryon's cattle was Evrytion, son of Ares, and their guard the fearsome dog Orthus, who had 2 heads. With such guards, capturing the cattle was bound to be an extremely difficult feat. Geryon was the son of Chrysaor and the nymph Callirrhoe. His father Chrysaor was the son of Poseidon and the fearsome Medusa, while Geryon's mother Callirrhoe was the daughter of Oceanus. The etymology of the name Geryon derives from the verb gyrio, meaning to sing and also to shout. Here it means to shout wildly, since it refers to a monster. Stesichorus described Geryon as being 3-handed and 3-bodied, that is, with 6 hands and 6 legs. You can see the 3-bodied Geryon. According to Apollodorus, Lucretius, Virgil, Horace, Ovid, and Seneca, Geryon had the body of 3 men united at the belly and divided into 3 from the flanks and thighs down. It is worth noting that Stesichorus also gave Geryon wings, because he wanted to present him as being far more monstrous. According to archaeologists, wings were used in Eastern, Ionian, and Etruscan art to represent demons. Following Stesichorus' narrative, the painters of 2 vases from the southern Italian colonies of the Chalcidians represented Geryon with 2 large wings. Stesichorus used the wings to make the monster appear more strange and invincible, presenting him as thrusting. But this element inspired the comic poet Aristophanes to parody him instead. According to the manuscript tradition of the comedy Acarnians, the peace-loving Dikeopolis taunts the bellicose Lamachus by saying, "Would you like to fight with Geryon the 4-winged?" A monster who has 3 bodies, 3 hands, 6 hands, and 6 legs can easily be parodied if he is also winged. The whole feat is divided into 3 acts: Hercules' journey to the west, the capturing of the cattle, and the return to Argos. With the help of the poem's fragments and Apollodorus' description of the labor, Stesichorus' narrative can be reconstructed as follows. After a long and dangerous journey, Hercules reaches Tartessus in Spain. Tartessus was the area where the river Guadalquivir flows today. The river flows from a mountain that was once rich in silver, while the mud of the river was rich in tin, silver, and gold. The area was legendary for its wealth from the trade in metals. The tradition held that Hercules proceeded to Tartessus and erected, as tokens of his journey, 2 pillars, standing opposite each other at the boundaries of Europe and Africa. In order to cross the ocean and reach Erythea, the island of Geryon, Heracles used the gold cup of Helios. The cup, bowl, and cauldron were shapes that the imaginations of the ancient poets had resorted to in order to describe an early form of ship. Yet, in the case of the brawny Heracles, who is parodied by Aristophanes as stupid and gluttonous, Stesichorus encouraged later writers to comment ironically on the journey. Athenaeus informs us that large gold cups of wine had been called ships of the sun, from the time when Stesichorus portrayed Heracles as floating in the sun's cup. When Heracles reaches the island, the dog Orthus senses his smell and jumps up at him. The hero kills the dog and the herdsman Evrytion with his club. Menoetes, another herdsman who looked after Hades' cattle on the island, informs Geryon of what has happened. Geryon's mother Callirrhoe, you can see on the right, begs her son not to fight Heracles. Even so, Geryon sets up a fight with Heracles, and the latter kills him with his arrow. Now, undisturbed, Heracles loads the cattle into the cup of Helios and returns to the European mainland. On the way to the island of Geryon, but also when returning from it, after having accomplished his labor, Heracles kills wild animals and malefactors, thus releasing the inhabitants of various regions. Elsewhere, such as Gaul, he founds cities and tames bastions. In this way, Heracles is transformed into a Mediterranean hero who functions as a bearer of civilization and redeemer of people. Many aspects of the myth relate to the underworld. The island of Erythea is located in the west, there where Helios ended his daily journey. The 2-headed dog Orthus is the brother of the 50-headed dog Cerberus, guard of the underworld. The cattle of Hades grazed on this island in addition to the cattle of Geryon. In the Etruscan wall painting of the Tomba dell'Orco, an armed Geryon stands as bodyguard near the throne of Hades and Persephone. Virgil, in the Aeneid, includes Geryon as one of the monsters of the underworld. It is worth noting that the 10th labor of Heracles is questionable from an ethical perspective. Geryon may have been a monster, but he lived on his island without disturbing anyone, and Heracles came to steal his property. In order to do this, Heracles had to violently kill the guards of the flock and its owner. Geryon fights bravely because he prefers to die while defending his property. Pindar was the first who dared to criticize Heracles' 10th labor negatively in the following lines. Lo, the king of all, of mortals and immortals, guides them as it justifies the utmost violence with a sovereign hand. I bring as witness the deeds of Hercules. For he drove Geryon's cattle to the Cyclopean portal of Eurystheus without punishment or payment. Pindar correctly characterizes the capture of the cattle of Geryon as a most violent act. The sense of justice pushes the Boeotian poet to exclaim that he is praising Geryon and not Heracles. But he prefers to remain silent so as not to upset Zeus. Pindar is pious and prudent. He fears the wrath of the gods and does not wish to anger the audience, which adores the great hero. He thus justifies the reprehensible act by stating that the law dictated it. With the word law, he means the dictates of fate, which are identified with the will of Zeus. Whatever Heracles did was done according to the will of the great god. This labor, as well as the others, had to be committed, as they are stages towards the achievement of the hero's immortality. From the few surviving fragments of a poem that contained over 1,300 lines, I have selected those scenes in which Stesichorus arouses the audience's emotions the most. The herder Menoetes, having brought the bad news about the theft of the flock, advises Geryon to think of the parents and not to risk his life in an attempt to punish the murderer and thief. Geryon proudly responds that he is determined to confront the thief. He will either defeat him and get his flock back, or he will fall fighting like a hero, in order not to shame the generation of his father. Callirrhoe attempts to prevent her son from taking part in the deadly duel, pleading with him. Like another Thetis, she describes herself as unhappy and pitiful, and like another Hecabe, she appeals to the breast milk she gave Geryon in order to make him listen to her. The scene contains much drama, as Callirrhoe is drawn in imitation of the two mothers of the Iliad, the divine Thetis and the mortal Hecabe. Stesichorus combines the two Iliadic figures into one in order to achieve a more dramatic tone. At the same time, on the divine level, Athena asks Poseidon not to seek to save his grandson Geryon from death. As this is his destiny, Athena will help Heracles in his labor, as she has in others. The moment when Heracles' poisoned arrow fatally wounds one of Geryon's 3 hands and the blood trickles down and stains his breastplate is startling. The audience is sad at the unjust loss of Geryon, while Stesichorus describes, as far as is permissible, Heracles' rival in a sympathetic way. On the other hand, Heracles is represented violently during the killing of the cattle guards as a thief and not heroic, since he killed Geryon deceitfully, hidden behind a rock. Yet, because Stesichorus is addressing Greeks in both Magna Graecia and mainland Greece, he does not conclude his poem with a negative image of the great Heracles. The beloved hero of all Greeks appears grandly at the end, as he had successfully completed a labor most difficult for any other mortal. Geryon dies shamed as his hands fell one after the other like the petals of a poppy. Who would have expected that such a mighty rival as Geryon would have been extinguished as easily as one of the most sensitive flowers, which sheds its petals at the slightest? Because Homer was neither unjust nor one-sided, constructs for the Trojan Hector the very sympathetic image of a warrior who died defending all he had. his city, his family, his property. On the other hand, in order not to displease the Greek audience, Homer presents, after so many atrocities, a human Achilles at the end of the Iliad. I'm referring to the scene where Achilles feels compassion at the sight of the kneeling old man Priam, begging him and asking to be given the body of his son Hector. With Homer as his model, Stesichorus portrays Geryon in a sympathetic way, but at the end he elevates the greatness of Hercules. Thank you very much.